But if there are alien beings on another planet, what does that do with your biblical interpretation of life? If there are far superior beings that in fact did come here and did manipulate human DNA and did create what we now think of as modern humans, if that becomes fact, and you still have to account for were they created, you still have to account for the code, you still have to account for all these things that you're saying about intelligent design, but what does that do for your interpretation of the biblical version of history if in fact there are some untold numbers of advanced civilizations?
Yeah, again, I'm completely agnostic because the Bible tells us that we were made in the image of God with capacities that reflect those of our Creator. It doesn't tell us that he didn't make other such beings on other planets. C.S. Lewis, the great Christian apologist, wrote that wonderful space trilogy in which he speculates about other planets with other forms of life, with other forms of higher conscious life.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't think there is a biblical doctrine on that. So I'm completely agnostic and open on biblical grounds. And as a scientist, of course, I'm interested. There's been two different lines of thinking about that. One, that there's so many universes and therefore likely solar systems that it's inevitable that we would have life someplace else. The other strain of thought that's a little bit more recent is the idea that, yes, there's lots and lots of places where it could happen, but the number of parameters that would have to be the number of things that would have to be just right and the probability of getting each of those parameters is so small that even that 2 trillion galaxy universe is not enough to render the probability of getting life somewhere else.
Can I stop you there?
Probable unless there is intelligent design.
Okay, unless there is intelligent design. But if it exists here, we have proof that it exists here. We're talking right now. You and I are here. We know intelligent life, at least in our own personal experience, exists here.
Yeah.
And the universe could be of a size and a scope that we can't even possibly comprehend. We're talking about infinity, and this is not an uncommon thought about the universe, that the universe is in fact infinite, and that it is so big that not only does this Earth exist, but a version of this Earth where all the events exactly as they've taken place on Earth have taken place in space on other planets an infinite number of times, because because you were talking about something that's so large, it's so huge, every possible version exists. An insane, huge number of yous are out there in the world, and infinite numbers of yous presenting this exact same discussion.
Or maybe there's a me arguing for
but what I'm saying is maybe it's more,
it's
even more complex than just simple intelligent design, but intelligent design on a scale that's so large that is happening simultaneously in so many places, so ubiquitous in the universe that it's impossible for us to even quantify.
Well, let me come back at you on this just a little bit. This is where the idea of the multiverse comes in, because it happens that our universe actually has a quantifiable number of elementary particles and a limited number of interactions that could take place between the elementary particles, and therefore an upper bound number of events that might have taken place from the Big Bang till now.
Right.
And that's why the multiverse gets proposed, because the multiverse proponents realize that what are called the probabilistic resources of this universe are not actually sufficient to render even the origin of life, and I have argued in Signature in the Cell, even the origin of a single protein probable given those probabilistic resources.
That's if there's not a multiverse.
Yeah, we need a multiverse.
And if the theory that each galaxy, which contains a supermassive black hole, that inside that supermassive black hole, if you could somehow get through the event horizon, you will go to another universe that has hundreds of billions, if not trillions, of galaxies as well. And that is the portal, and this is the process that they all have that there is just an infinite number of universes. It is possible, right?
Right. But as I mentioned before, the plausible accounts that have been, to render the multiverse concept plausible, one needs a universe generating mechanism. And
Which also means something intelligent.
it means something some
intelligent.
prior fine tuning.
But that
And
could
then-
be also the case, right?
Right,
That this universal
yeah.
intelligent thing is
I'm not
created
against the
in
multiverse. It might
infinite
be,
number
yeah.
of universes.
It might be true, it might be false, but it's only plausible if there's prior design. That's the argument
So
that I make in the
what
book.
you think is that the universe itself has grand design to it, and that it's ultimately moving towards a goal?
I would say that the designer has a goal
What do you think that is?
to restore relationship between himself and human beings.
But just human beings. What about alien life forms?
Or maybe, I mean, again,
life
I
in general?
don't know. Maybe
intelligent life in general? Like, what is it? Is it the soul? Like, what do we have that's particularly unique?
in the biblical ontology, it is being made in the image of God means we not only have a mind but also a soul and a spirit. There's a biblical word for animals, the nephesh, the Hebrew word, and they have a mind of a sort. And anyone who's a dog owner knows this. There's a lot of smart creatures, but there is something special about us, and we all I think understand that intuitively.
Well, we understand it to us.
So it may be that there are other creatures that have those unique endowments in other planetary systems.
But not on Earth, not orcas, not dolphins.
I think
they're super intelligent.
I think they are super intelligent animals. Yeah,
They can't
yeah.
manipulate their environment like we can,
Yeah.
but they do have a cerebral cortex. It's 40% larger than a human being's.
Yeah, I mean, mere brain capacity is not the whole story, as we know
Right,
from
for
even
sure.
paleoanthropology. We have,
And dumb people with big heads.
yeah. Who do things like boxing and MMA, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, anyway, I mean, I work the other end of the time scale, the cosmology, the origin of life, the origin of animals. You're asking me about anthropology issues. So
Well,
I
I'm
have-
just
I have
asking
opinion.
you
No, I
about
mean, it's-
your thoughts on
yeah,
these
yeah,
things.
I
'cause
mean,
it's
it's
so
great
complex.
conversation,
I have
yeah.
to imagine that you've considered a
Yeah,
lot
I
of these
think
things.
about all this stuff, of course. But
How much have you looked into psychedelics and the origins of religious experiences?
your driver was telling me about it on the way here. It sounds like
You haven't looked into that other than that?
I have a former student who had an experience of God on a psychedelic.
Me too.
You know, so I'm aware of those experiences.
You haven't
Yeah.
had them?
I have not.
Would
but
you want to?
I'm sort of happy with the experiences of God I've had in the sort of.
Wouldn't you like to actually say hi?